Aloha, friends, family, and food foresters. This is Tutu here again at jackhair.com, reading chapter 2 of the book he wrote called The Emperor Wears No Clothes. And in chapter 2, we're looking at a brief summary of the uses of hemp. So he starts. If all fossil fuels and their derivatives, as well as trees for paper and construction, were banned in order to save the planet, reverse the greenhouse effect, and stop deforestation, then there's only one known annual renewable resource that is capable of providing the overall majority of the world's paper and textiles, meeting all of the world's transportation, industrial, and home energy needs, simultaneously reducing pollution, rebuilding the soil, and cleaning the atmosphere all at the same time. That substance is the same one that did it all before: cannabis, hemp, marijuana. So he's going to show different sections throughout here, how it affected ships and sailors, and textiles and fabrics, and then fiber and pulp paper. And it's going to go on for a bit. There's a lot of sections. So I'm going to skip reading all the footnotes in here just to let you know, because it will take too much time. So I'm just going to read the text of everything, and then if you want to read the footnotes so you can dig down deeper into everything, you can come to jackhair.com, go to the top of this website where it says The Emperor Wears No Clothes, chapter 2. Okay, and I believe this is what do they call it? Fair sharing. I am reading from somebody else's website, but I think that it's allowed. Okay. So, ships and sailors. From at least the 5th century BC until the late 19th century, 90% of all ships' sails were made from hemp. The other 10% were usually flax or minor fibers. The word canvas is the Dutch pronunciation of the Greek word cannabis. Cannabis, from the Mediterranean basin Greek language, comes from Qanuba, Canabosum, Kana, which scholars have now traced back to the dawn of the 6,000-year-old Indo-Semitic European language family base. The early Sumerian Babylonian word Ka-na-ba or Ka-na-ba is one of the man's longest surviving root words. Kain means Cain, and B means two. Two reeds or two sexes, because as we learned in last video, the cannabis plant has male and female parts on one plant. So in addition to canvas sails, virtually all of the rigging, anchor ropes, cargo nets, fishing nets, flags, shrouds, and oakum, which is the main protection for ships against salt water, which was used as a sealant between the outer and inner hull of ships. They were made from the stalk of the marijuana plant. Even the sailors' clothing, down to the stitching in the seamen's rope soled and canvas shoes, which comes from cannabis, was crafted from cannabis. An average cargo, clipper, whaler, or naval ship of the line in the 16th, 17th, 18th, or 19th centuries carried 50 to 100 tons of cannabis, hemp rigging, not to mention the sails, nets, and needed it all replaced every year or two due to salt rot. Okay, so additionally, the ship's charts, maps, logs, and Bibles were made from paper containing hemp fiber from the time of Columbus until the early 1900s in the Western European American world, and by the Chinese from the 1st century AD on. It says hemp paper lasted 50 to 100 times longer than most preparations of papyrus and was 100 times easier and cheaper to make. Incredibly, it cost more for a ship's hempen sails, ropes, etc., than it did to build the wooden parts. nor was hemp use restricted to the briny deep. It was also used for textiles and fabrics. 80% until the 1820s in America, 80% of all textiles and fabrics used for clothing, tents, bed sheets, linens, rugs, drapes, quilts, towels, diapers, and even our flag, Old Glory, were principally made from fibers of cannabis. For hundreds, if not thousands of years, until the 1830s, Ireland made the finest linens and Italy made the world's finest cloth for clothing with hemp. The 1893 to 1910 editions of the Encyclopedia Britannica indicate, and in 1938, the Popular Mechanics magazine, which you kids probably don't know anything about, but that was a popular magazine in the 1900s. They estimated that at least half of all the material that has been called linen was not made from flax, but from cannabis. And in 450 BC, this guy Herodotus describes the hempen garments made by the Thracians as equal to linen in fineness, and that none but a very experienced person could tell whether they were of hemp or flax. So, although these facts have almost been forgotten, our forebears were well aware that hemp is softer than cotton, warmer than cotton, more water absorbent than cotton, has 3 times the tensile strength of cotton, and is many times more durable than cotton. In fact, when the patriotic, real-life 1776 mothers of our present-day blue blood daughters of the American Revolution organized spinning bees to clothe Washington's soldiers, the majority of the thread was spun from hemp fibers. Were it not for the historically forgotten or censored and currently disparaged marijuana plant, the Continental Army would have frozen to death at Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. The common use of hemp in the economy of the early republic was important enough to occupy the time and thoughts of our first U.S. Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton, who wrote in a Treasury notice, "Flax and hemp have so much affinity to each other, and they're so often blended that they may be with advantage considered in conjunction." And the covered wagons went west, covered with sturdy hemp canvas tarps. Ships sailed around the Horn of South America to San Francisco with hemp sails and ropes. The original heavy-duty famous Levi pants were made for the California Gold Rush 49ers out of hemp. Homespun cloth was always spun by people all over the world from fibers grown in the family hemp patch. America, this tradition lasted from the Pilgrims in the 1620s until the 1930s when it was prohibited. Congress was told in 1930s by the Federal Bureau of Narcotics that many Polish Americans still grew pot in their backyards to make their winter long johns and work clothes, and greeted the agents with shotguns for stealing their next year's clothes. These agents, why do they think they can come in people's yards? The age and density of the hemp patch influences fiber quality. So if a farmer wanted soft linen quality fibers, he would plant his cannabis close together. As a rule of thumb, if you plant for medical or recreational use, you plant 1 seed per 5 square yards. When planted for seed, you plant 4 to 5 feet apart. So it changes the way the cannabis grows based on how close together you plant them. It says here you can plant 120 to 180 seeds for a square yard for rough cordage. The finest linen or lace is grown up to 400 plants per square yard and harvested early, between 80 to 100 days. In the late 1820s, there were hand cotton gins, which were invented by Eli Whitney. They were largely replaced by European-made industrial looms and cotton gins. Gin is short for engine, which is interesting. I did not know that. That makes sense. Because of Europe's primary equipment, machinery, technology lead over America. So 50% of, this is a while ago, but he was saying a lot of chemicals used in America agriculture were used in cotton growing, and hemp needs no chemicals and has few weed or insect enemies, except for the US government and the DEA. For the first time, light cotton clothing could be produced at less cost than hand rotting and hand separating hemp fibers to be hand spun on spinning wheels and jennies. However, because of its strength, softness, warmth, and long-lasting qualities, hemp continued to be the second most used natural fiber until the 1930s. In case you're wondering, there's no THC or high in hemp fiber, so you can't smoke your shirt. Don't try it. Okay, so in 1937, there was a marijuana tax law, and the new DuPont, quote, plastic fibers, unquote, came under license from a German company, which replaced the natural hemp fibers. So DuPont owned this company, and it introduced nylon to the market also. Finally, it must be noted that approximately half of all chemicals used in U.S. agriculture are in cotton growing. So until 1883, most of the paper in the world was made with cannabis hemp fiber, including books, maps, money, stocks and bonds, newspapers, etc. The Gutenberg Bible and other famous books, the King James Bible, some of the old pamphlets, and a lot of books were printed on hemp paper. And the first and second drafts of the Declaration of Independence were also written up on hemp paper and then actually copied over onto a parchment, which is a prepared animal skin. And that was the document that was actually signed. So hemp paper lasts 50 to 100 times longer than most preparations of papyrus paper and was easier to make. So what the colonial Americans and the rest of the world used to make paper was from the discarded sails and ropes sold by ship owners as scrap for recycling into paper. The rest of the paper came from worn out clothes, sheets, and other household items that were made primarily from hemp and sold to scrap dealers, hence the term rag paper. Our ancestors didn't throw things away, so they took their scraps and recycled them into paper. And it's a high quality, long lasting paper made out of hemp. It can be torn when it's wet, but it returns to its full strength when dry. And it can be stable for centuries and almost never wear out. Many of the old US government papers were written on hempen rag paper. It's generally believed by scholars that early Chinese knowledge or art of hemp paper making, a long time ago, was one of the two chief reasons that Oriental knowledge and science were vastly superior to that of the West for 1400 years. Thus, the art of long-lasting hemp paper making allowed the Orientals' accumulated knowledge to be passed on or built upon, investigated, refined, challenged, and changed for generation after generation. In other words, cumulative and comprehensive scholarship. The other reason that Oriental knowledge and science sustained superiority to that of the West for 1400 years was that the Roman Catholic Church forbade reading and writing of Europe's people. In addition, they burned, hunted down, or prohibited all domestic books. So that was called the Dark Ages. So hemp is also used for rope, twine, and cordage. Virtually every city and town in the world had an industry making hemp rope. Thomas Paine outlined natural resources that we need, which would be cordage, iron, timber, and tar. And he said, hemp flourishes even to rankness. We do not want for cordage. So as long as we had hemp, we had a lot of cordage. From 70 to 80% of all rope, twine, and cordage was made from hemp until 1937, when it was replaced mostly by petrochemical fibers from the DuPont Corporation. So hemp is the perfect archival medium. The paintings of Van Gogh, Gainsborough, Rembrandt, etc., were primarily painted on hemp canvas, as were practically all canvas paintings. Get it? Canvas, cannabis. Of hemp withstands heat, mildew, and insects and is not damaged by light. Oil paintings on hemp and flax canvas have stayed in fine condition for centuries. Virtually all good paints and varnishes were made with hemp seed oil and linseed oil. So in 1935 alone, 116 million pounds of hemp seed were used in America just for paint and varnish. Let's see. It says the hemp drying oil business went principally to DuPont. Again, DuPont is making the oils. Even the DEA itself admits that 94 to 97% of all marijuana hemp plants that have been seized and destroyed since the 1960s were growing completely wild and could not have been smoked. So it's a naturalized plant. Okay. So they replaced hemp seed oil with synthetic petrochemicals. It was also used as a lighting oil. It was the most consumed lighting oil, exceeded only by whale oil. It lit the lamps of the legends, and in real life, Abraham Lincoln, it was the brightest lamp oil. Of course, it was replaced by petroleum and kerosene. And the celebrated botanist Luther Burbank stated, "The seed of cannabis is prized in other countries for its oil, and its neglect here illustrates the same wasteful use of our agricultural resources." Luther Burbank he was in California, and he was one of those smart people a while back around the time of Henry Ford, I believe. He's one of my favorites. He had a lot of great ideas and wrote a lot and created beautiful nurseries. In the early 1900s, Henry Ford and other futuristic organic engineering genius recognized that up to 90% of all fossil fuel in the world today should long ago have been replaced with biomass, such as corn stalks, cannabis, waste paper, and the like. Biomass can be converted to methane, methanol, or gasoline at a fraction of the cost of oil, coal, or nuclear. But government and oil companies will insist that burning biomass is no better because biomass, unlike fossil fuel, biomass comes from living plants that continue to remove carbon dioxide pollution from our atmosphere as they grow through photosynthesis. So they're not coming from these old, dead, and decomposing sources of biomass. They're coming from new, renewable sources. So this can be accomplished if hemp is grown for biomass and then converted through pyrolysis or charcoalizing. It can be converted into energy, and it's at least 4 and possibly many more times richer in sustainable, renewable biomass than its nearest rivals. So it's great for that. Methanol is used by race cars. And it's a petroleum and methanol option. Even it can be converted into a high octane lead-free gasoline. Okay, so anyway, there's a possibility of using cannabis for energy. And then let's see. Oh, it's big in medicine. Tinctures and elixirs were routinely used medicines for humans and veterinarians. Varying marijuana extracts, buds, leaves, roots, etc., were the commonly used and widely accepted medicines in the world for the majority of mankind's illnesses. The Catholic Church would not allow it. The U.S. Pharmacopoeia indicated that cannabis should be used for treating fatigue, coughing, rheumatism, asthma, delirium tremens, migraine headaches, and cramps, depressions. Queen Victoria used cannabis for her PMS. In the 20th century, cannabis research demonstrated therapeutic value and complete safety in treating many health problems, including asthma, glaucoma, nausea, tumors, epilepsy, infection, stress, migraines, anorexia, depression, rheumatism, arthritis, and Alzheimer's disease and herpes. Boy, oh boy, we could all use some cannabis. So hemp seed was it's a food and oil protein that was used in, the hemp seed was used in porridge, soups, and gruels, which are like oatmeals or something, I guess, or maybe broth. By virtually people around the world, monks were required to eat hemp seed dishes 3 times a day and to weave their clothes with it and to print their Bibles on paper made with its fiber. Hemp seed can be pressed for its highly nutritious vegetable oil, which contains the highest amount of essential fatty acids in the plant kingdom. And these essential oils are responsible for our immune responses and clear the arteries of cholesterol and plaque. You can also, the byproduct of pressing the oil from the seed is a high quality protein seed cake. It can be sprouted or ground or malted or baked into cakes, breads, and casserole. Marijuana seed protein is one of mankind's finest, most complete, and available to the body vegetable proteins. Hemp seed is the most complete single food source for human nutrition. It was also the world's #1 bird seed for both wild and domestic birds. It was their favorite seed food on the planet. 4 million pounds of hemp seed for songbirds were sold at retail in the US in 1937. It says here, birds will pick hemp seeds out and eat them from a pile of mixed seed. Birds in the wild live longer and breed more with hemp seed in their diet, using the oil for their feathers and overall health. I guess in 1937, people told the Congress of the US, songbirds won't sing without it. So they put sterilized cannabis seeds into the bird seed. Hemp seed has no observable high for humans or birds. There's no THC in the seed. It's also a favorite fish bait in Europe. Anglers buy hemp seed at bait stores and then throw handfuls into rivers and ponds where the fish come thrashing for the hemp seed and are caught by hook. No other bait is as effective, making hemp seed generally the most desirable and nutritious food for humans, birds, and fish. It's also building materials. 1 acre of hemp can produce as much cellulose fiber as 4 acres of trees. Hemp is the perfect material to replace trees for pressboard and particle board and for concrete construction molds. It's practical, inexpensive, fire-resistant construction material with excellent thermal and sound insulating qualities. It's made by heating and compressing plant fibers to create strong construction paneling, replacing drywall and plywood. It's demonstrated superior strength, flexibility, and economy over wood fiber, even as beams. So French building material made from hemp herds mixed with lime actually petrifies into a mineral state and lasts for many centuries. So that's amazing. Hemp has been used throughout history for carpet backing, for plastic PVC pipes. And so we can envision a house of the future built, plumbed, painted, and furnished with the world's #1 renewable source, hemp. And it avoids some allergic reactions associated with new synthetic materials. So this part, smoking, leisure, and creativity. The American Declaration of Independence recognizes the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Subsequent court decisions have inferred the rights to privacy and choice from this and the US Constitution and its amendments. So many artists and writers use cannabis for creative stimulation, from the writers of the world's religious masterpieces to satirists, many of the famous ones from the last centuries, musicians and writers. And of course, it says smoking marijuana only enhances creativity for some and not for others. But throughout history, various prohibition and temperance groups have attempted and occasionally succeeded in banning the preferred relaxational substance of others, like alcohol, tobacco, or cannabis. Abraham Lincoln responded to this kind of repressive mentality in December 1840 when he said, "Prohibition goes beyond the bounds of reason in that it attempts to control a man's appetite by legislation and makes a crime out of things that are not crimes. A prohibition law strikes a blow at the very principles upon which the US government was funded." So economic stability, profit, and free trade. Wouldn't that be nice? Economic stability. So Jack Hare goes on to say that he believes that people would buy biodegradable clothing made from cannabis without pesticides or herbicides. And it's time that we put capitalism to the test and let the unrestricted market of supply and demand, as well as green ecological consciousness, decide the future of the planet. So if people were able to choose their garments based upon the particular qualities they wanted in a fabric. Today, we have no such choice. And the role of hemp and other natural fibers should be determined by the market of supply and demand and personal tastes and values, not by the undue influence of prohibition laws, federal subsidies, and huge tariffs that keep the natural fabrics from replacing synthetic fibers. So government suppression of information has resulted in virtually no public knowledge of the incredible potential of the hemp fiber or its uses. By mixing hemp with cotton, you'll be able to pass on your shirts, pants, and other clothing to your grandchildren. Intelligent spending could essentially replace the use of petrochemical synthetic fibers with tougher, cheaper, cool, absorbent, breathing, biodegradable natural fibers. So I guess the clothes would last a long time. Many of these countries currently make millions of dollars worth of sturdy hemp and hemp/cotton textiles and could be making billions of dollars worth of it annually. They use their traditional farming and weaving skills while the US tries to force the extinction of this plant to prop up destructive synthetic technologies. Cannabis cotton blends were still not cleared for direct sale in the US till 1991. The Chinese were forced by tacit agreement to send us inferior Ramie and cottons. Okay, so in 1990, garments containing at least 55% cannabis hemp arrived from China and Hungary. And in 1992, many different grades of hemp fabric had arrived from China and Hungary. Now hemp fabric is booming demand all over the world, arriving from Romania, Poland, Italy, Germany. Hemp was recognized as the hottest fabric of the 90s by various popular publications, and they've run stories about it. Additionally, hemp grown for biomass could fuel a $1 trillion per year energy industry while improving air quality and distributing wealth to the rural areas and their surrounding communities and away from centralized power monopolies. More than any other plant on earth, hemp holds the promise of a sustainable ecology and economy. And here are some more footnotes. Oh, here's a story of when hemp saved George Bush's life. One more example of the importance of hemp. 5 years after cannabis hemp was outlawed in 1937, it was promptly reintroduced for the World War II effort in 1942. So when the young pilot George Bush bailed out of his burning airplane after a battle over the Pacific, little did he know that parts of his aircraft engine were lubricated with cannabis hemp seed oil. 100% of his life-saving parachute webbing was made from U.S. grown cannabis hemp. Virtually all the rigging and ropes of the ship that pulled him in were made of cannabis hemp. The fire hoses on the ship, as were those in the schools he had attended, were woven from cannabis hemp. Finally, George Bush stood safely on the deck. His shoes' durable stitching was of cannabis hemp, as it is in all good leather and military shoes to this day. Yet Bush spent a good deal of his career eradicating the cannabis plant and enforcing laws to make certain that no one will learn this information, possibly including himself. So the Battle of Bulletin 404. This was a story, of a young man named George Schlichten who had made a decorticator, which was a machine that could take the hemp or other fibers and turn it into paper pulp. And they were trying to get the newspaper baron, what's his name? Scripps, to use this fiber. And this is a whole story about how they tried it, and eventually it was not used. They just decided to keep using this young man Schlichten wanted to stop using all the forests and deforesting the world. So he thought if we could use hemp, we wouldn't have to be deforesting the world. But it turned out that based on technicalities from they just decided to raise the price of newspaper and continue using tree paper. So, and then here's a little story about how that all happened. And the U.S. government was, the people that worked in the U.S. government didn't want to touch it because they knew that hemp was not allowed. So anyway, this is chapter 2, the uses of, a brief summary of the uses of hemp. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope that you will like and subscribe to my channel if this is interesting to you. And I will be putting out more videos from this book, as well as the videos I usually put out talking about how to grow food forests. And so anyway, I hope you enjoy this, and I'll see you in the next video. Aloha!